Okay, so I'm live. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen. I am a racial trauma therapist and I'm the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So, happy Sunday, happy Father's Day. Okay, happy Father's Day. It's Father's Day in the UK. I don't know if it is where it's Father's Day anywhere else on the planet, but yeah, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there that are doing an amazing job. Happy Father's Day to all the brothers that are showing up for their children. Happy Father's Day to just thinking about those that have lost their fathers. Um, Happy Father's Day to those that don't have their fathers in their life. Happy Father's Day to those that are struggling with being a father as a black man but still showing up. And for those of you that are struggling in particular with fatherhood, that are not able to show up for your children, this live stream is going to be for you. Okay, so yeah, so I've been doing, just to give you some context as to what's been happening. So it was my business anniversary on the 1st of June. Okay, hang on, it's really hot and I need to just put my fan on because I'm menopausal as well. I need to make sure that I'm getting okay. So yeah, on the 1st of June of this year, it was my business anniversary of 8 years, and on the 2nd of June was my recovery anniversary of 13 years being sober. Okay, so what I decided to do is do 30 live streams in 30 days. Okay, just talking about insights that I've learned, talking about people I answer questions that people have asked me, talking about recovery, what I've learned over the years, and yeah, just share what's on my heart really. So, and also just talking about any current stuff that comes on. So, obviously it's Father's Day today. I did another live stream the other day, just specifically speaking to wounded daughters of wounded daughters that have had difficult relationships with their dad. So today, in a change of what I normally talk about, I normally talk directly to black women. So today I really wanted to talk to the brothers. I want to talk to the fathers. Okay. Now, if you are in a relationship with somebody, or you're co-parenting with your baby daddy or whatever, maybe this live stream still might be for you, in the sense that it might give you a bit more of an understanding as to what black men are going through, how they how that what's going on for them. It might just give you a bit more insight as to bit more understanding as to how you can show up, or set boundaries and stuff like that. So today I just kind of wanted to talk about my experience of working with black men in therapy. And if you're a black man and you are looking for a therapist, and you might get some ideas just from this live stream as the sort of things that I can support you with, and things that maybe you should think about if you're thinking about going into therapy. My experience kind of overall is that, and just kind of what I hear from my clients and stuff like that, is that generally, there's a lot more black women that are doing this work than black men. I think black men obviously have a different, society kind of is quite shaming of black men that kind of asking for help and stuff like that. I mean, they do it to all of us in terms of black people about asking for help, but I think that black women are a lot more open to doing this work than black men, and black men seem to find it a lot more difficult to do it. So that's another reason why I wanted to do this live stream. I do occasionally get messages from black men about information and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of, because at the end of the day, but all of us need to be doing our work. It's not just black women that need to be doing the work. And this is something that I hear quite a lot, actually, from black women, is that, they're doing their own work. Maybe they've started on their own self-help journey years ago and have been doing their work, reading books, all that kind of stuff, attending events. But for black men, they don't always seem to be doing the same work. They don't seem to be having the same depth of work that needs to be done. So, hi Charles, thanks for joining. So yeah, it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting to to just to think about the disproportion of that, and I think that sometimes can be quite frustrating for black women, because then there's a disproportion of people really understanding what needs to be done, and that can sometimes create conflict in the relationship when there's a misalignment with the emotional maturity, the emotional intelligence, the sense of awareness, all of that sort of stuff. And sometimes black women might feel that they're carrying black men when it comes to things like therapy and stuff like that, or just their own sense of self-awareness. And at the end of the day, you know, it's important for black women to put those boundaries in place, that black men need to be doing their own work. Okay, we all have to do our own work in order to for the relationship in whatever capacity to be successful, whether it's business or love relationships or parenting, all of that kind of stuff. It's across the board. You know, we all need to be doing our own work. We all need to take responsibility for our work. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to go through, I kind of created a list, like a brain dump of things that are important for black men just to be aware of, and some of the things that, you know, that can benefit you from working with me as a black female therapist. Okay, so the first thing is, you know, there's shared experiences. Obviously, both being black, there's shared experiences around race and microaggressions and all of that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, it can be a lot easier to build trust, and you know, it might be easier for you to open up, because you're basically you're working with somebody who you know, who has the same experiences when it comes to things around race and systemic oppression and stuff like that. So that can be a really good way of kind of opening up the conversations and stuff like that, because there's a shared sense of there's a shared sense of experience, there's shared experiences around that. Okay, so the other thing is around cultural competence as well, which is really important. And I did share in my live stream that I did yesterday around the importance of cultural competence. And that means that, you know, I have also, again, it's kind of linked to the shared experiences of racism as well in that sense. But cultural competence means that, you know, when I'm working with you and we talk about various issues, there's always going to be that conversation around, okay, well, how does you being a black man living under the system of racism, how does that impact how you're thinking about that certain type of thing? So yes, we might look at your individual experiences. Yes, we might look at you know, your history in terms of, you know, what happened within your family of origin, but also, you know, cultural competency also means that we're also going to look at it from a systemic point of view, and that conversation is going to be, you know, this stuff is layered. Okay, but the conversation around being a man and also being a black man living under the system of racism are things that are going to come into the conversation, are going to be explored, because there's going to be a lot. Then there may well be things that you've internalized about being a black man, you know, especially, you know, when we think about social media and you know, the violence and stuff that we see, the police brutality that we see, the terrorism that we see. You know, how many times have we seen, you know, black men being shot, you know, being killed on social media, and you know, that's going to have an impact. So this fear of being harmed, what happens to all of those types of feelings? How do you as a black man deal with that stress? Do you just park it away? You know, how does it show up in your life? How does it show up in your relationships? How does it show up in your ability to really show up in your family? How does it show up for you as a father? Especially if if you're raising black boys as well, how does that impact how you raise those black boys? You know, so it's thinking about, you know, how our culture and how living under the system, you know, how all of that kind of knits together, and what does that mean for you as a black man? What does it mean for your sense of identity, your sense of self, all of that sort of stuff. So and all of that stuff is really important, you know, all of that stuff, because it's important to have a holistic view of your experience in the world as a black man. So cultural competency, being able to have those conversations, feeling safe enough to be able to have those conversations, and so also bringing in the stuff around patriarchy as well. You know, what stuff have you internalized about all of that stuff? That's all part of the cultural, you know, the culture of living under the system as well, and how that impacts how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your relationships. All of that stuff is really important. So the next one is a huge one for me. Now, a lot of the work that I do with black women is around healing the mother wound, and I think there is a lot of black men out there that are also struggling with their own mother wound. You know, I hear a lot of black men talk about the violence they received, the abuse that they received from their mothers, and this is not always talked about. And so then what happens is the toxic relationship they end up having with their mothers, it gets acted out in so many different ways. It can get acted out in their relationships. It can get acted out as misogyny. It can get acted out. When we think about some of the some of the hip hop music that comes out is very misogynistic and all the rest of it. And sometimes that can be a projection of the anger that they feel towards their mothers that was never really healed, that was never really dealt with. So one of the things that that I work with black men is to have those types of conversations and give them an opportunity to think about what that means for them in terms of how they feel about themselves and how they feel about their relationships with black women, and actually being vulnerable with me as a black woman gives them an opportunity to really look at that. Because what will happen is, sitting in front of being vulnerable or not with me, there might be resistance about being vulnerable with me because of their experience that they had with their mum. Those are the types of things that we can look at. Okay, those are the types of things that we can look at. If you read, actually, I don't think I've got the book here. I think I've put it away. Yeah, I think I've put it away. I had it on. I should keep that book on my shelf, actually. If you look at Dr. Stacey Patton's work, she's a black child, an advocate for black children. She's written an amazing book called Spare the Kids, and she's actually got a chapter in there that talks about black men and their mothers, and how a lot of, some of the stories in there are horrific. She actually interviewed quite a few black men, and they shared their stories of how they were abused by their mothers and stuff like that. And so it's important to really have that conversation. I remember one time a black guy said to me that I was the first black woman that was able to that had ever showed him any empathy. His mother was very violent, his dad was kind of non-existent, and his mum was really abusive. He's abusive to him as a child, and even when he was older, his mum was still very abusive. And he ended up in a relationship with a woman who was also abusive. So that pattern of being abused by black women was just repeating itself. It was just repeating itself, and he didn't know, because he hadn't done any of the work before. He just wasn't able to show up and advocate for himself. When it came to black women, he would just revert to this childlike part of himself that wasn't able to show up. So he remembers him saying to me that I was the first black woman that had ever shown him any empathy. And it was quite an emotional journey for him to be able to do that, to allow himself to get angry and to get vulnerable, and to get really honest about what happened to him, the truth about what happened to him when he was a child, and to begin that process of starting to grieve the loss, not only of not having the mother that he deserved, but also the pain that and suffering that he'd experienced in his relationships as an adult, because he wasn't able to show up for himself. He wasn't able to advocate for himself as an adult because he still had all of that trauma from his mum that he was still trying to deal with. So being in therapy with me would involve, if you've got mother wound issues, it would involve unpacking a lot of it, exploring it, looking at how that's impacted who you are as a black man. The emasculation, exploring what the emasculation looked like, naming it for what it is, and seeing how that emasculation, how does that show up in your life today. It might be that you have a lot of shame, that you carry a lot of shame, and that you find it really, really difficult. And it might show up in avoidance in relationships. Maybe you can't fully allow yourself to surrender to being receiving, to being loved. Okay, it might be that you're very avoidant in relationships because you don't know what it means to be loved. You can't allow yourself to be loved because being vulnerable meant that you were being abused. Okay, being vulnerable puts you in a situation, makes you feel like it feels unsafe. Okay, being vulnerable feels unsafe for you. So let me turn this off now. I hope it's not making a whole lot of noise in the background. Anyway, so vulnerability and the abusive relationship that you have with your mom means that kind of intimacy, closeness, all of that kind of stuff is being fused with being abused. That's the core belief that's there. That's the trauma bond. There's a trauma bond when it comes to being close to black women Okay, if your mother was abusive. So that means you're going to find it difficult in relationships. So it might be that the acting out pattern of it, you might just be like a serial relationship person. You might just be the type of person that there's a commitment phobe, that you can't, you're not able to really commit to anyone in any sort of relationship in any sort of capacity. So you end up just going from this one to that one to the next one and whatever, and a lot of cheating and a lot of chaos. A lot of chaos in your relationships, because the core relationship that you had with your mum, that primary relationship that you had with your mum, is your first experience of falling in love, okay, loving someone, which was abusive, toxic, chaotic, all of that kind of stuff, painful. Okay, so then what happens is you're always going to be in other relationships that kind of replicate this kind of chaos. If you're not in that chaotic stance, it might be that you're completely the other end of the spectrum, where you're just completely avoidant of relationships. You don't want to be anywhere near. You don't want to be anywhere near any type of relationship. So you're just feeling really, really shut down. Okay, there's an amazing book by somebody called Patrick Carnes, and it talks about within the context of sexual self-hatred and sexual anorexia. If you've been doing your work for a while, I probably wouldn't recommend that book, actually, if it's your first time, because it is quite full on. You would need to be either in recovery or in therapy or something like that. But it's a really great book that talks about sexual trauma and how that impacts our ability to be in relationships. There isn't a cultural context to that event, unfortunately, but there is another. Actually, there's a great essay that I have. Actually, if you want the essay, okay, just inbox me and ask me for it. It's about sexual anorexia and how it impacts the relationships, but it talks about it within the context of race. I forget the brother's name that wrote it now. It was written quite a while ago, but it also talks about it within the context of how our sexual trauma that came from the plantations and enslavement and all of that kind of stuff, and how that has created a pattern of sexual acting out or sexual acting in behavior by black men and stuff like that, by us as a people. So I can't remember the name of the thing, but if you would like a copy of that essay, okay, please just send me an inbox, or you can email me info@yardofgreatness.com, and I'll send you the PDF. It's a fantastic essay that will help to give you some context, because we have to remember that a lot of the reasons why our relationships are so painful and why things are so difficult is because we have to remember, for black men on the plantation, they were also getting abused. There was things like forced incest, there was forced rape, there was and obviously with all the trauma and stuff that happened on these plantations, they could be sold off at any point. All of these things are going to have an impact on how black men show up today. And yes, it was hundreds of years ago. Actually, it wasn't. Yeah, it was a few generations ago. But none of our ancestors went to therapy. When they left the plantations, none of our ancestors got any trauma therapy. They didn't have any trauma therapy when they left that. And my parents are from Jamaica, so we're talking about 240 years of enslavement. Okay, 240 years of forced incest, forced rape, all that. There's a lot in there. Okay, there's a lot in there. So to begin to unpack that, okay, you need to be working with somebody that's culturally competent, that understands the context of all of these things and how those patterns, to be able to piece all of the bits of the jigsaw together for you to be able to understand your acting out patterns now. Okay, all of that stuff is really, really important. So yeah, I do have experience and awareness and stuff like that around things like sexual addiction, compulsion, anorexia and stuff like that. So if you've got those issues going on, then you can book a session with me, and we can I can definitely support you with that stuff. Okay, so let's see. So the last thing that I wanted to share that's really important for black men to understand, that's important for working in therapy, is it reframes the narrative. Okay, it reframes the narrative from black men against black women to black men and black women against white supremacy. Okay, let me say that again. It reframes the narrative okay, from black men fighting with black women to both of us, black men and black women, fighting against white supremacy, systems of oppression. Okay, I see so many people fighting each other all the time. I see it online all the time. Black men are this, black men are this, black women are that, black women are that. Well, you lot do this and they do that, and and it goes on and on and on. There's always that thing, that war that's going on between black men and black women. And the truth of the matter is, as a community, we're a traumatized community. As a community, living under the systems of oppression means that we are unwell. There are a lot of issues. We have a history that's not been healed, of hundreds of years of enslavement and trauma. We've got stuff that we're trying to deal with in the present that's traumatic. So with that being said, it's important to remember that both of us, both sides, need healing. Both sides need to be doing their own work. Both sides need to be being self-aware. Both of us need to be doing our own work. Both black men and black women need to do our own work. So there needs to be less narrative around black men versus black women, and more of a narrative around, what are you going to do how are you going to take responsibility for yourself? How are you going to take responsibility for doing your own work? Okay. And what does that mean in terms of community work as well? What does that mean in terms of community work? How we can start to build our stuff together. And then also, you can look at it systemically. It's us as a community against the systems of oppression. It shouldn't be black men against black women. That's how the system wants us to do that. The system wants us to do that. But when you're doing your own work, okay, it will empower you to start being more discerning about the people that are in your circle, about, being discerning about who you work with, who you don't work with. When people start, you can always tell the people that are not doing their work because they just start acting out. They just start acting out or acting in. They think they can treat you any sort of type of way. That's when you know that those people are not doing their work, because they're not self-aware enough to get this stuff. They're just not going to get it. And this is how you start to really build a village that feels safe for us to be able to move forward. Because whilst nobody's doing their own work, and whilst people are still acting out with each other and not taking responsibility for themselves, there is no community. You set boundaries around those that are still acting out and choosing not to do their work. It doesn't mean that you're better than them or anything like that. It just means that they're not ready to do the work, or not willing or unwilling to do the work, and that's their choice. But it just means that you then make a decision that you're not going to interact with that person and their toxic behavior. You have to hold those people accountable. If they're acting out and being hurtful and stuff like that, those people have to be held accountable. That whole conversation around not all kinfolk is skinfolk, not all skinfolk is kinfolk, is true. But it has to be done in a way that they have to be held accountable for their toxic behavior, and you have to be really, really clear and discerning about who you have in your circle, who you do your work with. Who you work with as a therapist in therapy is really, really important, because you need to have somebody that understands the complexities of what our community is going through, and have done their own work, so that they can hold the same space for you. Okay, they need to be doing their own work so that they can hold the space for you to be able to see even when you're in therapy acting out. Because there might be times in therapy where there's projection and all of that kind of stuff, but the therapist needs to be skilled enough to be able to understand when that's happening. But therapy for black men can be a wonderful, empowering experience and liberating experience for you as a black man. Yes, initially it might feel uncomfortable. Yes, initially you're going to have to dig deep. Yes, initially it's uncomfortable when you're trying to, you need to get vulnerable and all that sort of stuff. But in the long term, Okay, it's going to have an amazing it's going to have an amazing impact on your own sense of self. It's going to have an amazing impact on your self-esteem. It's going to have an amazing impact on your ability to show up in relationships the way that you weren't able to show up before. It's going to have an amazing impact on your ability to parent, because you're breaking patterns. And just in general in the world, you're going to find that you're going to feel more empowered generally. You're going to feel more empowered generally, and you're going to understand yourself a lot more. You're going to understand yourself a lot more, and you're going to attract, actually, you will actually end up being in relationships with women, with better quality women, with more high value women, in the sense that you're going to be able to relate to women in a much more healthier way, which means that you that's a gift that you can have, okay, that you're bringing to the table in your relationship. Having emotional or having more of an awareness, being emotionally intelligent, all of that kind of stuff is sexy. Emotional intelligence is really, really sexy. So if you're more emotionally intelligent as a black man, and you're taking that into a relationship, your woman is gonna that's gonna be an amazing gift for you and for her and your children. So think about it from that perspective as well. You're gonna feel a lot more empowered. You're gonna feel a lot more. There's gonna be a lot more richness in the relationship when you're doing this work, because you have more of a sense of awareness. You have more of a sense of awareness, and there's something about just taking responsibility for yourself and not expecting your partner or whatever to just be be the person that holds all of that sort of stuff. If you're from the LGBT community as well, just having that sense of awareness as a gay man, as a non-binary man, you're going to be able to understand all of that stuff so much more. So much more. It's going to bleed into all of those relationships, your interactions, whether it's work, whether it's love relationships, whether it's family members or whatever. The fact that you're a black man and you're in therapy and you're doing this work and you're understanding a lot more what's going on for you, it's gonna trickle out into all of your other relationships. Hi Amina, thanks for joining. So think about all of those things. If you're a black man and you are interested in working with me, okay, doing all of this stuff. If you're a black woman and you are interested in working through some of this stuff, thinking about what's going on in your relationships and your partner and all that sort of stuff, click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. So I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you're, for the brothers that are watching out there, if I hope the rest of the Father's Day goes well for you. If you're having a difficult time, then, seek support. Seek support. The support is out there. You don't have to do this stuff. You're not on your own. Okay, you're not on your own. Oh, something that I did forget to say, actually, just if you're looking for support, okay, if you want to work with a black male therapist, maybe I'm not the right therapist for you, okay, you can find details around finding black therapists, a black male therapist, if that's what you want to look for. Go to Batten, BAATN, the Black and Asian Therapist Network. Okay, Eugene runs an amazing organization for black therapists. You can go there and look at their directory, and you can find, black therapists there. There's also another brother called Rotimi, okay, who also does an amazing event called Black Men on the Couch. I went to the last one I can't remember when it was, a couple months ago, and it was really, really good. He has black men there, and they almost do like on the stage, they do like a live session with him black men that are in the public eye, and they almost do like a therapy session, on the stage, so they can just talk to each other, and it kind of like it's about empowering black men to think about therapy and to think about what that means. So again, you can find if you just Google Black Men on the Couch, you'll find all the information there, and Rotimi's details as well. But he's an amazing therapist, actually. I recommend him. He's really good. And just look for his event. And I know that he's going to be doing a lot of other bits and pieces around. And Blackman on the Couch is going to be something. It's something that he does every now and then. So yeah, just follow him. I think he is on. I'm not sure if he's on Instagram. I think he's on Facebook. But anyway, Google him. You'll find all his details. All right. So that's it. So any other issues you want to talk to me about, email me info@yardofgreatness.com, or drop me a DM, and I'm happy to support. Okay. So have an amazing Father's Day the rest of the day, and I will speak to you next time. All right. Take care. Bye.